So there's some information to share with you to provide an update on where we're at through half of the year on officer-involved shooting statistics. Then update on my schedule so nobody thinks I'm dodging requests for comment. Then provide an update on a vehicular heat stroke campaign. And then I've got two cases to give you an update on with respect to status. So to begin with, our officer-involved shooting statistics. And by the way, there is a rolling set of information that you can find on the office website. If you enter into your search bar maricopacountyattorney.org/OIS, you can see the statistics we have for call-outs as well as statistics that break down whether there was gang involvement, drug involvement, whether the suspect was armed, based on the cases that we've reviewed. So we provide both of those so you can see a rolling total of how many cases we've been called out on per the officer-involved shooting protocol, and then the number of cases and categories that we've reviewed and made a decision on with respect to lawful use of force. In terms of overall numbers through the first half of the year, and the statistics I'm going to share come from a total number of 47 officer-involved shootings through June 19th. So this is through June 19th of 2018. For a breakdown of the ethnicity of suspects, 2 Native American, 19 Hispanic, 7 African American, 18 Caucasian, and 1 the ethnicity was not available with the information we've got at this time. Out of those 47 instances, 47 times a suspect was armed or law enforcement believed the suspect was armed. And I'll give you some of a breakdown here. In 34 of the cases, the suspect either had a gun or a rifle, and in a couple of them had guns and a rifle. In 4 of the instances, the suspect had a knife, and 1 they had a box cutter. And in 2, they had a pellet/BB gun that resembled an actual firearm. In 24 of the 47 cases to date, the suspect is deceased. And so the remainder, they are either injured or not injured under those. Additionally, there were over half of the cases, officers were responding to a 911 call. In over 20% of the cases, the suspect was contacted as part of serving a warrant. In terms of trends, our lowest year for officer-involved shootings going back to 2012 was 2015, where we had 40. Our highest was in 2013, where we had 59. That's what I've got to share with you right now. Again, if you want to be able to review ongoing statistics, both for instances in which we've been called out per the officer-involved shooting protocol, or a running tally of the cases that we have reviewed after submittal from a law enforcement agency, you can find those at maricopacountyattorney.org/OIS. Update for you, in July, I've got several out-of-office events that include National District Attorneys Association Summer Conference and our annual law enforcement conference in Arizona, where I will be out of the office. So if you're looking for any kind of an on-camera statement, I'm not going to be available. If you need a comment from the office, email will probably be the best, and in rare instances I might be available to provide you a statement via telephone, but I'm letting you know that so you're aware that I'm not avoiding you. For our vehicular heat stroke campaign, which apparently that's all we've got up. Oh wait, here we go. Okay, that's what we're going to leave up. We're now officially in summer, but we're already 50 days into our Don't Leave Me Behind campaign, reminding our community not to leave a child or pet behind in a parked car. Nationally, there have been 18 deaths of vehicular heat stroke as a result of children being left in a parked car. So far in Maricopa County, we're at 0. I'm aware that there is a report of 2 children allegedly left in a car at a mall. We haven't received the submittal yet. I don't have any additional information. But thankfully, there's no reports of any physical injury, and certainly there were no fatalities. So we're 50 days in, we're at zero. We need to stay at zero. As well, to remind folks, if you do see a child or a pet in a car and they are at risk of imminent death or serious physical injury, you're to call 911. You're to verify that there is no other way to get the child out or the pet, and then to use only the minimal force necessary to be able to get them to safety. And then you're to stay with the vehicle until first responders arrive. That's Arizona's Good Samaritan law, for lack of a better term, for either children or pets at risk of vehicular heat stroke. A couple of cases to update you on. In the case of State v. Kansas, spelled as it sounds, Lavarnia, Lavarnia, this was one of two co-defendants involved in the death of a 9-year-old, that defendant's son, that occurred in March of 2017. We've been notified that that suspect is now deceased. Case is still pending against the spouse, Wendy Lavarnia, who is still pending trial on charges of first-degree murder, child abuse, and hindering prosecution. And then the second case to update you on, Oscar Torres was the victim, killed by a 13-year-old suspect who was playing with a gun. We still have not received a submittal yet, so there's nothing for me to update you on that particular case. That's the information that I wanted to share with you. Actually, one other case of community interest. Marlo Chiquito, spelled Chiquito, was sentenced on June 19th to 35.5 years for second-degree murder and kidnapping. And this is a case that began in May 4th of 2017. Officers were called to an apartment complex after the decedent's husband found her body with obvious signs of trauma from several lacerations across her neck. A short time afterward, officers found the defendant walking around yelling out noises and wearing clothing that was covered in blood. He told investigators he had consumed both alcohol and methamphetamine prior to taking a knife from the kitchen and slitting his mother's throat while she was sitting in a chair. And for that conduct, he again was convicted of second-degree murder and kidnapping and sentenced to prison for 35.5 years. That's the information that I wanted to share with you specifically. What questions do you have?
The number of officer-involved shootings, is that concerning to your office? Is that concerning you?
Well, I mean, it's not the highest that we've seen in the last several years, and we've got several more months to go. There are times where we've seen in the last several years that there are fluctuations. So this is one of those things, Uriel, where we get them as they come. One concern, obviously, is making sure that we have the resources to process them when the cases are submitted for us to review them. The goal in our protocol is to have the investigations submitted within 6 months so that we can ensure that they're timely and thorough and objectively done. And then we want to turn them around quickly, too, so that we can provide notice to the public and to the involved officer and police department. And the basis for that is that our review on whether or not the use of force was lawful is different than a department's review with respect to policy.
You mentioned making sure you guys have the resources. Are you guys going to get more resources to review these?
We do. We're able to shift resources internally. We've got folks who've been trained on it. It's just moving one person from a current assignment to assist. So we'll be able to do that. I don't anticipate that we're actually going to get delayed in being able to report anything because of the number. We're still in the vicinity of what our 5-year average is, which is, I think, between 42 and 44, a little bit above that, but still down from the high that I mentioned of 59 in 2013. And by no means is there any particular goal from year to year either. In most of these cases, as I was sharing with you, suspects have been armed with a weapon. There's no way for law enforcement to be able to control that as a variable or someone's willingness to engage in violence against law enforcement either. Other questions? Going once? Twice? All right, one of the most thorough.
Just one
Yeah.
more from me. The narrative that the Phoenix Police Chief has said was that it's the suspects who are making, are sort of provoking the shootings. Do you agree with that narrative?
Well, each one of these officer-involved shootings is very unique for the particular set of circumstances. One of the consistent things that I've seen over the last few years is a failure of suspects who are armed with a gun, in particular, to not lower the weapon or to place the weapon down, and instead, ultimately pointing the weapon in direction of officers, which they then take action to deal with that particular threat. I do see that as a commonality, and not just within officer-involved shootings involving the city of Phoenix, but in a lot of other municipalities too. I'm just as intrigued as I think anybody else is to see what the review of officer-involved shootings that the city of Phoenix is going to pay for and see what that reveals. They did do one several years ago that was a 5-year study that might be worth you going back and taking a look at to compare and contrast to some of the situations that we're seeing now.
Is there any contrast you can also bring up on police use of force, not necessarily with officer-involved shootings, but the use of force in general, because there's been a few cases like that also pop up that bring in a lot of questions on that.
Yeah, and I think the reaction of some agencies to review their use of force protocol in general, not just deadly force, has been warranted. And it certainly, because of the use of body-worn camera video, is providing for a greater opportunity for both the community to provide oversight and actually for prosecutors too to understand the nature of the threat that a police officer is facing and what's happening at the time that force is used. And that's helped us in making charging decisions, both to charge a suspect as well as to ultimately dismiss cases, because the scenario is one in which there's no reasonable likelihood of a conviction. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.